important video talking about the nation of Blacks in America and globally, their plan. I'm gonna go through their plan that they planned all the way from the 1940s, and that's actually being enacted today in real time. So before I get started, guys, I want you guys to, if you can, get a pen and a paper so you can take notes and go back and look this stuff up after we're done with the video. Or if you have your phone, just take some notes in your phone of some key points that I'm going to be talking about for you guys to go ahead and look it up later on. Okay, so I'm going to go through the timeline of this very, very nefarious plan that they have to get rid of all of the minorities. So Black people, whether you're in America, in Africa, or somewhere else. So I'm going to start with something called the Policy Planning Study, or PPS 23, which was done in February of 1948. And before I get started, I want to give credit to the person that I got this information from, because a lot of this information has been scrubbed from the internet and it's hard to find. So this information I got by a man by the name of Dr. Hagen, and he talked about this stuff almost like 11, 12 years ago. Actually, no, it's been longer than that. He talked about this stuff almost like 30 years ago, excuse me. So yeah, going back to Policy Planning Study, PPS 23, in February 1948, a man named George Kennan said the U.S. must devise a pattern of relationships which will allow them to retain 50% of the world's wealth while only having 6% of the world's population. So think about the time period that's in. 1948 is during World War II, when the Nazis, they were doing a lot of experiments, human experiments on the different subjects that they would take into the concentration camps. And so they were doing studies on population control, how to make populations docile. They were using different techniques and things of that nature. So they actually brought a lot of these people over to the U.S. in Operation Paperclip. So this particular plan was formed in 1948. So now we're going to go ahead into something called the King Alfred Plan, aka Rex 84, which is the extermination of Blacks in America and globally. Right. So the person that I mentioned earlier, he actually found fire. And if you actually go online right now and try to type in King Alfred Plan, it's just going to show you like some information about a fictitious book, a novel that someone wrote, which is not what this is. This is completely different. They virtually like scrubbed the internet of a lot of this information. So you kind of have to like know specific things to look up and like so that you can actually find the real information and not just what they want you to see, right? So the King Alfred Plan was
Did she say 1940?
Recently been declassified after many years. It was developed between the years of.
Go ahead.
Did she say 1948?
Say it again.
Did she say 1948?
As far as for the King Alfred Plan?
Yeah. I've been trying to remember. I couldn't, and I decided to ask before it got too far. Did she say 1948?
I believe so, yeah. And that, well, I don't think she said 40. I'm not sure she said 48 specifically, but I know she said 1940s.
1940s? Okay.
Yeah, within the.
I was asking because I was trying to like get the timeline of get her timeline of what was going on, because I know she said World War II, and I know we dropped the bombs in 45.
Yeah. So this is a lot of this stuff that she's talking about, especially Operation Paperclip or Project Paperclip, happened after World War II. But as far as the timeline she's talking about, I've been able to find the King Arthur Plan. I found something called the Internal Security Act of 1950, or the McCarran Act. The second one she mentioned, the name just escaped me. The second one she mentioned, I can't find that. But then I found the Project Paperclip, and then I found the National Security Study Memorandum 200. So I found all of the ones except the second one she was talking about, as far as the document.
Okay. I just was trying to get the I was trying to remember the date she said because I was like, wait, there was it flipped something in my brain, but I couldn't remember the date, and I didn't want to misattribute her. So,
Now,
but
now
it's fine.
while we got this break, let's go ahead and welcome everybody to Breakdown Friday. I'm Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones, and we are here giving our breakdown on this young lady. Well, this is a full video of this young lady and her husband. I believe they're located in Africa, and they basically putting people on game about the King Alfred plan, or a group of plans put together a while ago with the intentions to exterminate the minority populations or the non-white populations of the world. And you know, if white people are 10% of the population of the world, the rest of the world ain't minorities, but you know, non-white people of the world. But I will put the links to these documents in the description. But this is us basically. We're going to be listening to what the young lady is saying, as well as accessing these documents and giving our perspective on this King Alfred plan, or all these plans grouped together to exterminate the black populations across the world. And you know, just looking at it from as many different perspectives as we can, because ultimately, y'all already know one of the questions we're gonna ask is what the hell we gonna do about it, right? But just want to go ahead and set the stage. Remember to like this video, comment, subscribe, share. I did it right, PC. Like this video, comment, subscribe, share. Make sure y'all go to fetlifestation.com after the show, fetlifestation.com, and make sure y'all check out thepax.org as well. And you already know to check out ontheshow1.com. But let's go ahead and get back into it.
Of 1960 to 1964 by an organization called the National Security Council. We all heard of the National Security Council. And this plan actually details the arrest, detention, and encampment and extermination of the black population in America. And it was actually amended to include the Hispanic population by President Ronald Reagan in 1984. However, the original King Alfred plan was originally approved by President Lyndon Johnson, right? So I'm going to jump down to the National Security Memorandum 200. And this was 1974. After they formulated the King Alfred plan, they went ahead and did another plan called the National Security Memorandum 200. And
so I want to stop it here, because before we get into the National Security Plan Memorandum, I want us to deal with the King Arthur plan. But I do want to give like full context of the King Arthur plan. And what's good about this video is, well, first and foremost, PC put us on the King Arthur plan, what, 7, 8, 10 years ago?
Right. Yeah, probably. I used to write blogs, and I used to write blogs about alleged conspiracy theories that were actually facts, but they were little known facts. So it was called the Rabbit Hole back in. I started that in 2010. So I would talk about that because I think we all got together around 2013, 2014. So that's when I would bring those conversations into the fold with us. But yeah, and this is not something that, I mean, I'm glad the young lady found something and she, it startled her, because I had the same response when I found out. It startled me. And I felt like there's a need to spread this stuff because the plan itself is devious and wicked if you understand it. But it's similar in nature. It's similar to what the craze was about Project 2025, and the fact that you just have a global elite who themselves have can figured out that the best way for them to maintain supremacy over a planet is to operate, from a perspective of limiting the population or depopulating the planet. And they go into a lot, but it's more. But I'm gonna leave it at there for now. But I want to answer something that Pat said earlier, like when he said we dropped the bombs. I was in my eighth vein, like, who is we? So and I'm getting over little sinus thing. So if anybody is asking why am I talking like a raspy whisper, That's pretty much what's left of my voice after this week of battling this thing, man. Hanging around college students is it's just the worst. So
Look, you talking to somebody who do it every week. So Pat got a quick emergency, so he gonna be back. So real quick. But the very first thought that I had when I saw this video is this young lady and her husband did their research, got these videos, put these videos out, and people ain't gonna do nothing with the information for the most part. And that's the sad part. And that's the sad part, because if you really think about in the context of world history and the relations that Europeans have had with African people, and because one of the atrocities that come to my mind is the extermination of the Tasmanians. But also, because the first thought is, damn, most of us ain't gonna do nothing with this information. And that's sad. And then the second thought is, I wonder how much of this plan has already been enacted and how much of this plan has been reworked for modern times. Because I want to read one part, because I have the King Alfred plan pulled up on my other computer here. And the first part, it says, in the event of widespread and continuing and coordinated racial disturbances in the United States, King Alfred, at the discretion of the president, is to be put into action immediately. And so widespread and continuing coordinated racial disturbances, that's not happening. No. Nowadays, that's not happening. And the document also goes on, wrong mouse. The document goes on to point out specific agencies or specific organizations, Black organizations at the time that they were targeting. So the Black Muslims, the Student Nonviolent Coordinated Committee, the Congress of Racial Equality, the Uhuru Movement, the Group of Advanced Leadership, Freedom Now Party, United Black Nationalists of America, the New Pan-African Movement, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the National Urban League, the NAACP, and the Committee on Racial and Religious Progress, or CORE. And I'm not insinuating that there aren't plans to wipe us out, but I am. My thought is, how much of this is still relevant to us today, being in the conditions and the situation that we are today, because we're not the threat we was when this came out.
Well, one of the things that, it sounds like you just explained the tenets of the FBI COINTELPRO program at the time. And you're right, at that particular time, Black people weren't seen as a threat. And, right. Well, I think what we don't understand is, though, times change, rationales change, and then the focus and scopes change. Right. And, we've been neutered in other ways. Right. The things that destroyed the Black community more than anything else was the war on drugs. And with the war on drugs, it basically eliminated your warrior class. It eliminated the parental structure that was the baseline of culture, which was, on one half, it decimated the men, because the young men were in the streets and they were either selling drugs, using drugs, or they were warring over drugs. And then in addition to that, you had especially the crack cocaine was the first time that the women actually were centered in terms of its focus. And so we lost mothers, we lost the ones who were supposed to provide the culture. We lost the ones who made the house a home. And when you lose that, especially in a matrifocal society, which the Black community is, once you lose that, then everything else falls apart. And we have struggled from that perspective for a long time. I'm consistently asking men, and I'm going from, teenagers and all the support groups that I run. And I'm asking them, when did you know, like, when was the day that you looked in the mirror and said, I'm a man? And every one of them, the struggles were a little different. The pathways were a little different. But the one thing that was consistent is that being a man became on-the-job training, instead of us having a culture that actually exemplified the stages and steps to what manhood is. Right. And I think that no rites of passage. And even when we didn't have set rites of passage programs, culturally speaking, we would have milestones in which you would understand this is when I became a young man. This is when I became an adult. This is when I started merging into community leadership and actions, and I mean activities. And then also when we decided that this is the point in which I become an elder, and it's my job to be a tutor or
Mm-hmm.
to be a jegna to the generations to come. We didn't have we lost, and we're still figuring it out, because now the point of the conversation is, how do we break this generational curse so that the next generation of young brothers don't have to struggle through and find their way through manhood like we did, because we're losing too
Right.
many of prior to. And I think that there needs to be programs for the women, the young ladies.
Right.
I got a sister
Right.
who was out there in Michigan, and she is actually doing wondrous work trying to build up young sisters so that they don't fall into those pitfalls and traps that led to the generational curses that they've been dealing with, in terms of identifying with ratchet culture, accepting being unwed mothers and so forth, and doing things that are counterproductive to becoming the linchpins of the community that we all need. So that in itself, like I said, the war on drugs pretty much um, removed us as a threat. Like
Right.
the thing nowadays, it's just theater. When you see the
Well,
protesting and all that other stuff, it's irrelevant, because we see the work that goes on behind the scenes.
right. Right. And well, also I do want to point out, and not to we got to nitpick. We have to nitpick, and we have to nitpick because when she's explaining the King Alfred plan, she didn't specifically read the part like it was written out. She
Mhm.
read it as if this is the plan that they're just gonna wipe out all black people, but it says in the event of widespread and continuing and coordinated racial disturbances. And so
Mhm.
it's aiming at making sure they dismantle the organizations and dismantle the groups who are a threat to white supremacy. Once again, I read out the list of the different groups that they were targeting at the time. And like you were saying, objectives and all these different things change, because now you have the Hispanic population that's amassed and passed out population. You got the rising Asian population. So is the focus still on us, or the other side of the coin is, because we've reduced ourselves, or we've helped to reduce ourselves to a lower or um, fourth class citizens, does that make us even more vulnerable for elimination?
Well,
So Pat, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Pat.
No, go
Well,
ahead, PC. You sound like you were finna cook up.
Charbroil cooking, I'm saying, got some chicken on the bro, on the roast. So no, but we're also living in an age where we didn't see this coming, where we're really evolving past the era or the age of white supremacy. And I'm talking about globally. So right now you have a war that's taking place, like and many people talked about this, the reorganization of power, right? It was
mm-hmm,
called the Great Reset. And what's happening globally, because many of us here in America don't really see past the borders. Half of us don't see past the weekend, but
right,
we don't see past the borders, how the international community and the relationships, how that affects what's happening here internally. So we're not the ones on the fast fire. I'll give you an example that people can relate to. When um when Ice Cube left NWA, the rap group, right? And it's a shame I have to bring it to this, but hey, man, I just want to speak the language of the people. Um, when they started having their battles back and forth, right? And then IQ, NWA came out with their album, and then Ice Cube came out with No Vaseline. Um, People saw that as a legit beef, but when they asked Ice Cube about that recently, maybe like the last 3 or 4 years, and he was asking how long did the beef last with NWA. He said, "Oh, that wasn't long because Suge Knight came to the picture, so Easy had bigger fish to fry." So the battle with black people and white supremacy was similar to that. However, we have not been a threat to white supremacy since the 90s. And when a lot of this conversation was really populating. And white supremacy now has to deal with Asian supremacy. They have to battle within each other. So you see them going back and forth with the BRICS nations. So now they're having currency wars. It's a lot of things going on. They don't have to on us. I don't know, y'all might have lost me for a second.
We still here.
All right. They don't have to focus on us. We're pretty much in as we're in autopilot. Our collective self-destruction is in autopilot. They don't have to worry about us because we're not a threat to them. It's like we're a cat, but you've declawed. We've been declawed. So we can,
right.
The hairs on our backs may be raised and we can hiss, but they're looking at us like, man, give them some catnip. That'd be all right. And that's pretty much what we've become. So the need for this type of carnage and things of that nature that would have come if black people would have become, because it could have come to that if black people actually focused on building, that are becoming comfortable with being identified as white collar workers and access to the or being included in the so-called melting pot of what America became. But it didn't. Black people didn't strive. Black people, the ones that were born, got wiped out or placed in prison and became prisoners of war. And the ones who saw that and didn't want that to be them said, hey, man, listen, if you just give me a job, we'll leave all that other stuff alone. We no longer became the threat. And so the King Alfred plan, the plan they had in South Africa, Project Coast, which was biological warfare, where they were going to put chemicals into, the vaccines that would pretty much remove a black woman's ability to have children. You know what I'm saying? That was their counter to the end of apartheid in South Africa. All these different countries practiced it, but most of them learned what they learned from the eugenics programs that were right here in America. And I land my plane.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Pat, on the King Alfred plan and just our ability to do anything about it, or even is the King Alfred plan still relevant to the elimination of black Americans or black people across the globe today?
I think it's still relevant to black people across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's relevant for black people in America. One thing we never give white people credit for is they don't do anything just to do it.
Right.
Like there's a purpose behind all the atrocities that they've committed. Now, we might not think the purpose is worth the atrocity, but when you flip the lens and look at it from their perspective, it absolutely is usually. And so you look at it now and you say, well, what would be the purpose for destroying black people in America? It would do more harm to white supremacy than good to get rid of black people in America currently as things exist now.
Right.
And I think this is something we talk about a lot. The fact that times change. PC hit on it. You've hit on it. We've talked about it a lot in past videos. Black people aren't what we were before. We're not the Black Power black people from the 70s and 80s. We're not the golden era black people from the 90s.
Right.
We're not the civil rights and black liberation black people from the 60s, the 50s and 60s. We're not the black intellectuals from the 30s and 40s. We're not the black Renaissance from the teens and the 20s. We aren't the Reconstruction blacks. We aren't the newly freed slaves that had a vision and a hope and a belief in what they could achieve. Like, they've transitioned through all of those different types of blacks, and they've worked various different plans to get us to the blacks we are now.
Yep.
The blacks that are content with they not like us. And that's no shade, no shot. I love the song just as much as the next person. And I was just as giddy as everybody else when he stared at the camera and said, "Hey, Drake." But I also understand that that was the purest and most authentic expression of black power that this current iteration of black people have.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about as dangerous as we get.
Which is sad.
It is. And I don't put that on Kendrick either, because that's not his role as an entertainer to be the tip of the spear. Yeah, that's not his job.
Yeah, the people supposed to have their stuff together already.
Right. So I just want to say that before people start saying, no, I think what Kendrick did was amazing. I think what everybody is doing behind what Kendrick did
be quiet.
Severely lacking.
Be quiet. Well, because I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was like, it's the same thing that applies to this video, because even looking in the comments of this video and seeing the comments, it's like the part that really comes to sadden me is like, let's say this plan is enacted tomorrow. We're done.
Well, yeah. I mean, so there's no reason to physically eliminate black people in America right now. There's no reason for it. There are so many other people they could divert their resources towards eliminating that would yield a much bigger return on all of that energy.
Right.
So now, go ahead.
What Kyle finna say, because it's gonna go into what she's talking about in Operation Paperclip. Well, but going back to what you said earlier, now if we're talking about on a global scale, eliminating black on a global scale, having a purpose and the meaning behind that, yes, I could see that, especially if we're talking about a resource and economic and land-based conversations about that, population control and all those different things, because somebody's going to be occupying that, somebody could be taking up the resources. But if you're talking about, all right, Black America is still seen as a threat to white supremacy, I'm push back on that.
It's happening in the Congo right now. It's been happening in the Congo for the last 50 years. Millions and millions of black people are being decimated and eliminated in those coltan mines and all these other things. And so the repatriation of the different parts of Africa. It happens anywhere in the world where you have resources and you have people who don't understand the need. Right. They don't understand the need to not acquiesce to whoever they consider to be a superior group of people. And one of the things that we're starting to see more so is the fact that not only is this becoming more widespread, a lot of it is being uncovered right now with that probe that people are going to hate it, but Donald Trump is doing with putting a halt on all the U.S. aid. And now you're starting to see how many puppet regimes are functioning out there in the world because they're the ones crying about not receiving government aid from America. And so it's sort of like this is, and that's what I'm talking about too, with the global war, right? That we see the economic war that we don't see because we're too busy mad because I don't like Trump, but you don't look at the bigger picture. And too many of us are too immature to look at the bigger picture. So you look at the bigger picture and you see what's going on. You understand this is even bigger than Trump. This is the world realigning itself. And to speak on what y'all was talking about in terms of us, like if it happened today, what would we do about it? We would do the same thing we did in 2020. We would beg for help because we're not. And then not only would we beg for help, excuse me, we would also look to, sorry about that. This post-nasal drip is killing me. I'm gonna come back to that point in a minute.
Well, I think to speak to a little bit more of what he's talking about when you're talking, because right now we have to realize that white supremacy has been at the forefront of human society for much longer than any other group. Most other groups get a chance to be at the forefront.
Right.
When I speak white supremacy, I'm not talking about globalized white people. I'm talking specifically about the Western world, United
Right.
States, singular nation supremacy.
Right. Right.
Um, and they've been using their dollar and their military to stay in power against an emerging China, an
Right.
emerging Asian power. That
Russia.
things were going on. Russia's on that tip too. Russia's supporting China in their push.
The big three is Russia, China, and North Korea.
Right. So you're talking about now moving into a world of Asian supremacy, where Asians get a chance to dominate. And I know a lot of black people seem to think that we'll be in a better position with anybody at the helm except for whites. But it's like, no, pay attention to what's happening with black people with regards to Asian people. Pay attention. It's not going to be okay, especially when you consider that things carry forward. Right. Cultural views, cultural perspectives on other cultures persist. The Asians aren't going to step in and say, China isn't going to step in and say, you know what, the black folk ain't never done nothing wrong to us, so we're going to treat them. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and the follow up. I'm sorry, I just want to get this point out there. I gotta find some new allergy medicine. My cat is killing me. Anyway, yeah, she's running around here like she lost her damn mind. But the other part I was gonna say about the 2020 thing is not only did we build anything and we needed so much government help and assistance, many of us looked at it as recess. You know, people were like, you know, are we off house arrest yet so we can go back to work? But you had a pandemic that kicked off in like February of that year, late February. By June, black people had forgotten all about the global plague of our time and has still not done anything to prepare ourselves for the next rainy day. So when you ask that question, what will we do? We've already shown what we'll do. And too many of us think that the government is our safety net, not realizing the government is the one that put us in these predicaments that we're dealing with right now. And I'll have my plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, Atlanta, black people in Atlanta was wide open partying during the middle of a pandemic, not taking it serious. Most black people not going to take this serious, not going to take life. They don't take life serious, don't take anything serious. And so that makes us more vulnerable than anything. But getting into like the global aspect of it. And so that's going to take us into her getting into the Project Paperclip. So I'm gonna let it play and then we're going to come back and talk about Project Paperclip. So now we're talking about the global implications.
I'm going to read a little bit from this plan. So this is April 24th, 1974, Washington, D.C. And this is the National Security Study Memorandum 200. And it was sent to the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Agriculture, the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, the Deputy Secretary of State, Administrator, and the subject of the study is implications of worldwide population growth for U.S. security and overseas interests. So this is what they're trying to figure out. What's going on with population growth? How is this going to affect U.S. security and U.S. interests? Because remember, their plan is to retain 50% of the world's population, of the world's wealth, while only having 6% of the world's population. So they have to do studies to figure out how they can do this. They can't just formulate a plan. They have to study it and see exactly how they're going to do it. So in this study in 1974, it says the president has directed a study of the impact of world population growth on U.S. security and overseas interests. The study should look forward at least until the year 2000. So they wanted the study to run from 1974 all the way up until the year. They wanted them to do projections into the year 2000 to see how this was going to affect them. And they also said to use several alternative reasonable projections of population growth. So they wanted them to come up with different projections and models and they can decide which one they were going to use.
Don't sell your home until you do this. In today's market, it's hard to know how much money you should be getting for your home.
In terms of each projection or model, the study should assess, one, the corresponding pace of development, especially in poorer countries, the demand for U.S. exports, especially of food, and the trade problems the U.S. may face arising from competition for resources, and the likelihood that population growth or imbalances will produce disruptive foreign policies and international instability. The study should focus on the international political and economic implications of population growth, and the study should then offer possible courses of action for the United States in dealing with population matters abroad, particularly in developing countries, with special attention to these questions. One question is, what, if any, new initiatives by the United States are needed to focus international attention on the population problem? So they're making the world's population a problem for some reason. And we know why that is, because if there's, I think today they said there's like almost 7 billion people on the earth. Pretty much like 90% of those people are minorities and people of color. So I see why they have an issue with the population problem, right? And also they want us to know, can technological innovations or development reduce population growth, or ameliorate its effects? And also, could the United States improve its assistance in the population field? And if so, in what form and through which agencies? And they wanted them to send whatever they came up with back to the president for consideration, right? So this is National Security Memorandum Study 200 from 1974. And in
I said Project Paperclip, but it's the National Security Memorandum 200. So I have that right in front of me and was basically reading along with what she was saying. So like we're talking about resources and stuff, right? White people want to secure resources for themselves globally, want to secure power, want to secure land, want to secure wealth for themselves globally, because she talked about 6% of the population, 6% of the world's population controlling 50% of the world's wealth. But that's what the race, what Claude Anderson told us about what race was, and told us about the race as a competition. This is exactly what he was talking about, the competition. We're not in the competition, so we're going to be casualties, pawns, booty in the warfare, because shit, we're not even in the game. Y'all got this young lady and her husband did all this research, put this video out. And most black people still trying to whatever they trying to do. It's so unproductive, but it just, that's the saddening part about it, is the state of where we are right now. We're so vulnerable. It's crazy, because like if you go back to the King Arthur plan, they're talking about being able to round up people and put them into camps in different regions. So they have regions have the capital, Northeast, Southeast, Great Lakes, South Central, Deep South region 2, Great Plains, Rocky Mountain region, Southwest region, West Coast region. And they also talked about the areas that have the greatest black populations will be a little more difficult, but because black people don't have no real organization and resources, they'll get took overnight, but they'll be a little more difficult. They have a little more fight back, but they won't be a real fight, because no organization and no resources and no logistics. But even in getting into this, we're talking once again global implications, the global view of why America runs the way it runs, why the world runs the way it runs, and why people are fighting for resources, like China, Russia, North Korea, all these other people who are not allies to us. Even some allies are fighting for resources, and they will turn on each other any chance they get. Well, but we ain't in that equation like that.
No, go ahead, Pat.
I want to say, well, one of the things that I am hearing, and she keeps talking about 6%, and we understand as resources, and that's something I do wish more people would speak on, in terms of really understanding the motivations of white supremacy.
Right.
Because even when she falls back and says, well, of course we know why they want to do this, because they're only 6% of the population. No, that's them being 6% is irrelevant. They want to do it because they want the resources.
They want control.
They want like it wouldn't matter if they were 6% or 66%. They would still be planning to move the way that they're moving. But then we also, like with this positioning of minority, it's another one of those, like, all right, are we setting ourselves up for another BIPOC type situation where we become a part of this conglomerate, this amalgamation of minority peoples that works? Because if we're talking that way, then we're still not really talking the way we need to be talking.
Yeah, we still screwed because you're still trying to align yourself with people who see you as competition.
Yeah, well, but we collectively, and I say we, I mean the collective, like the royal we, we don't necessarily see this through the lens that we need to see it through. Because on one hand, she's talking about global depopulation, which is focused on Black people of the world. And then on the other hand, she's talking, from the perspective like an academic, but the two don't go hand in hand. When you see people rise all over the world, most of the time it's when they're dealing with issues of their base survival and their need to survive and to create circumstances in which they can guarantee generations to come, or at least put themselves in the best position for generations to come. Black people we don't plan past the weekend, and we don't organize anything more but parties, trips, and when it comes to yacht parties or going on cruises. And I wish people would, instead of just getting defensive when we say things like this, really take a deep dive into why we're saying it. We're saying it, is this everybody? No. And I hate when people try to personalize an argument just to win or just to exclude themselves from the majority of what's going on. We're talking about the majority of Black people who can't seem to get past this concept. I mean, listen, if Black people were doing it the way that some people come up and defend this stuff, then we wouldn't have to have this conversation.
Right.
And for many people, you say things and we talk about these are calls to action, right? They've been calls to action for a long time, but most people don't see themselves in the fight. So they think that there's some person watching this situation unfold from an ivory tower where they're not going to even be affected by the outcomes while they're currently being affected by the outcomes. And I think it's disheartening because I remember we were all rolled up, double fisted, what I'm saying, in terms of our involvement, how deep we was getting into this years ago. And the utter disappointment of seeing how the rest of us were, I don't know whether or not the cognitive dissonance kicked in, but there were far too many of us. Like the further we went, the fewer there were. Yeah. And to the point where, you basically saw that people were afraid. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have been afraid. But what I am saying is that we're allowing fear to paralyze us instead of motivate us to get us to a place where we don't need to be fearful anymore. The tale between the coward and the hero is that they both feel the same thing. It's just the coward, runs away from the situation and the hero faces it head on. And we have too many cowards in this thing that they operate, and they hide behind crazy names. They hide behind their costumes, and yet and still, but when it comes to the fight, we see who's still standing at the end of the day. And so what this young sister's trying to do, and she's trying to, in a good way, gaslight people to action. The thing is, instead of people actually taking to what she's saying and looking it up for herself, many people are looking at this from a perspective of how can I discredit her message? And too many of us look at situations with a smirk on our face, trying to figure out, because it means more to us to discredit another black person. It means more to us to say, oh, I don't know what they're talking about, than to actually consider what's written in print. These are documents. What she was describing was the Henry Kissinger plan of the war on food that he sold to, that he presented to the United Nations in 1972. The things that she was talking about in terms of depopulation, that was actually in a monument right outside of Atlanta on the Georgia Guidestones before they blew it up 3 years ago. This stuff isn't even hard to find. When she was talking about in terms of the war against Latin America, that was propelled by the CDC, who went down there proposing to be given free vaccinations to the populations in Central America. And what they really were doing was actually injecting them with all types of sexually transmitted diseases to depopulate them and destabilize their countries. And that came out about a few years ago in a briefing in which revealed the crimes of atrocities of the CDC and their war on Central America. So the thing she's saying, and she knows it well enough to know it and understand it. She really doesn't know it well enough to teach it or articulate it, but that's fine. She's doing what she can to show the rest of the population, and she's putting herself in some danger, by the way, because, well, put it like this, as our now ancestor Neely Fuller once said, if we truly were a threat to white supremacy, they would have made attempts on our lives by now.
Well,
and I think that's the most important part of all of this.
Yeah. Well, one of the thoughts that come to my head that I was thinking about the other day as I was going over this is, because all of this information is like on the internet and so accessible, going back to what you said earlier, what pivots have been made, what updates have been made, what's new out there, because the landscape is different. So you're not dealing with the Fred Hampton type, you're dealing with the Pastor Jamal Bryant type, the black people who are just gonna stand around and talk and party and bullshit. I ran into one of my professors the other day, and it was funny because I was telling him about me getting started with my Black History school, and it was like, that 3%, because most black people about that bull. So find that 3% that you can rock with. Of course, us three make 3%, but not really. But I just like to say that. But anyway, but it's just all coming to a head that it's disappointing that if you watch the whole video, it's a message. It's this couple giving this message. And yes, as you said, if we were on our stuff, their lives actually would really be in real danger. Now, if you watch the video, the young man is talking about, he believes that people are coming after them. And I can't dispute that because I don't know them. But I do remember one of the last interviews I've heard from Neely Fuller around this time last year when he was on the Rock Newman show. And he was talking about how even he himself is not a threat to white supremacy, and not because his message is stale, but because the people aren't going to do anything with the message. Mm-hmm. And once again, here we are.
Well, I think one of the things, and you said they're in on the continent, right?
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah, okay. So, and things might roll different over there on the continent,
right?
Right. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to know what's going on the continent or any part of it. What I will sit here and pretend to know is America, because I live here. So in America, they've played that game enough times, and white people learn too. That's another hidden secret about white folk. They actually learn. And I say that because I'm amazed by how many black intellectuals and black warriors seem to miss out on the fact that white people actually do learn. Like that's why they have all the study groups and the organizations doing all the research and analyzing and looking at stuff because they actually learn. I think white folks in America have learned that killing black people with a radical message is a last resort, not a first one. Right. Because if you just up and kill them, you create. And so why do that when I can kill you while you breathe? Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of us keep missing. Like, they can destroy your reputation. They can destroy your ability to provide for yourself and your family. They can make you a social pariah, not just socially, but to the point where your kids and your family and your loved ones don't even want to be associated with you. That's a fate worse than death, and you're still alive. So in America, anybody that's worried about them coming after you will, I would say, well, what is going on? And two, do you still have family and friends to support you? Do you still have a job you can go to every day?
Right.
Can you still pay your bills?
Right. Then
if all of these things are happening, I'm not saying they're not coming after you, but I'm saying you good at the moment.
Right.
Like you straight.
Right.
So I think that's one thing. But then the other thing is, I do think and I'm going to keep harping on this, one of the things black folk really have to accept is that we're not him or her anymore. Like, we're not them. We're not that group. So when we start talking about these plans, we got to have the awareness and the critical thinking skills to go back in time and think about this plan was in the 1970s. What were black people in the 70s?
Right.
Are we that now? That first level of analysis has to occur before we start talking about bringing these things into the present, because we need to be able to adjust. All right, where are black people now compared to where they were? And so where is this plan now compared to what it was? Is this plan still necessary? Again, that's not me saying they don't have some other plan. I'm positive that they're constantly executing some plan, and I'm positive that they probably have like a 90% success rate with their plans. Mm-hmm. But it becomes a matter of, as a people, okay, we got to look at it and we got to say, why is it that all of our radical youths become disgruntled academics in their elder years?
Right.
What's happening there? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's happening there? Where Samuel Jackson goes from what, and this is just me listening, I'm repeating back what y'all have said to me. By y'all, I mean people, not y'all. But y'all were talking about how Samuel L. Jackson was about that action in his younger years and how he took over a college campus and he was pro-black this and pro-black that. What happened to where he went from that to being regularly casted as a Sambo?
Bruh.
Yeah.
What's going on? And so I think these are the questions we got to ask ourselves when we start talking about it, especially young people, because she looks, I don't know how old she is. She looks young. But I do know we're seeing more and more young people come up, and they're coming up and we're questioning the leadership they're coming up under. But even the ones that are coming up under what we would consider solid leadership, what do they transition into in their elder years? Hell, Joe and I are going through that literally right now. PC is a step ahead of us. All three of us are in that path right now of becoming that radical youth that's becoming the disgruntled academic. We fighting it, but I'm gonna be honest. I'm looking at myself in the mirror every day, and I'm like, I'm turning into one of them finger wagging elders, just looking at the rest of the community members like, yo, what's going on?
Oh yeah, I'm there. I'm there. I am so there.
Yeah.
You think about it, man. We talked about this not too long ago, the path of least resistance, right? And this is where we get to, because I mean, the people we do it with, they don't, and actually you start to realize that, and this is where we go back to, a lot of people who do this, they don't do this because they want to be pro-black. I did this because I was, I understood the need for black nationalism because it was our best recourse to fight white supremacy here in America, and Pan-Africanism was the best recourse to fighting it globally. And I understood the necessity because it tends to, we need something that guarantees proliferation of the race. And what I found out is the majority of people that do this is because they're currently social misfits, and because they don't fit
Yep.
in other places in
Yep.
society.
Yep.
This
Yep.
is what
Yep.
they claim
Yep.
to.
Yep.
And because
Yep.
this
Yep.
is not something that's in them. Once they don't feel as though they're getting anything out of it, the social
It's a
club,
trend.
then they move on to other things in their lives, and they leave people like me like, what the hell did I get myself into, and with who? And so,
But that's a dangerous cycle. That's a cycle that continues to happen decade after decade, generation after generation. That's why things haven't improved. That's why, like the real ones, like you said, the real ones in the past were taken out. Other people saw that and was like, I don't know if I want to be that radical. So I'll be radical-ish. I'll be radical enough.
yeah, I mean,
And then
listen,
life changed.
I didn't heard the stories, and I didn't heard the stories of the Move Nine and how they were literally in prison. Prison, the warden used to bring in gangs off the street, mafiosos off the street, to try to assassinate them while they were literally in prison. They would literally have to put their mattress up against the door because the prison guards will unleash the fire hose on them and tried to flood them out in their own um bunks, in their bunks. They would literally be fighting every day just to survive. And we're not even talking about getting 3 hots in the cot. We're talking about what happened when people who actually believed in what they said and stood on, business. What happened to them? We've actually had people who were part of that movement who had to, when they got out, then there was nobody there for them. I think it's crazy because there was a movie about a gang, right? But what was the brother from New York? There was the story of the life and times of I forgot the brother, I think Carlson, something like that. Um, when he was in the gang, right? And he did time. He did like 5 years. And he came out. Nobody was left from the gang. But that's the same thing in terms of the everybody who becomes part of these movements nowadays. Because when it has, first of all, it's no movement,
Yeah.
and then we have people who want to clown it. And I've never understood people who clown black people for wanting to empower black people. I've never understood that.
It's that
For,
Negro mindset.
right.
Yes,
Well,
brother.
it's a coonish mindset, but I mean, I've never understood that. And most of them want to sound like they're an authority or information for which they're just anti what we're talking about, or anti what we're doing. And so even the ones that want to debate, well, brother, that's because you identify as black, and black is nothing but a crayon in a Crayola box. Now, if you want to identify with your nationality, you have to then go to the edicts and the maritime laws of 1847, and it's like, oh, fuck it. We get pulled over by a cop, we get confronted by a cop. They don't give a fuck about that thing you got on your head.
Right.
They don't care about that. They don't ask those types of questions. You know what I'm saying? Well, we'll both be chalk lines together, or we'll both be locked up together. It's just harsh because we would rather see each other as the ops, and we would rather be top dogs with each other than actually putting aside our egos. But like I said, and I'm gonna go back to something in a minute. Put aside our egos and looking at the collective gains we can have, right? Most people are looking at this to because it's a popularity contest for them. The guys are in it because they want to pander to the women, and they see it's an easy access to vulnerable and broken women. The women are in it because they want to be in the presence of what they identify as a powerful man because he's a good speaker. But none of them are in it because we want to create I ain't gonna say none, but not enough of us are in it because we want to create a future for our children, which was the primary motivation behind us putting together the Independence Day Project. And because of that, we're going to continue to find things to be adversarial about. We will continue to find things to get upset about, because our goal is not fixing anything. Our goal is to win this current debate or win this argument or win whatever. And because of the sickness that exists within us, you can't even get us to see past that flawed logic. Plain landed.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what you get with, you got this insane group of people who have gotten worse. Because the insanity has been there, but insanity has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse over the times. And now stuff is on autopilot. We're taking ourselves out. We're the biggest threat to ourselves right now. And we don't like to hear that. Look at statistics. Black people hate statistics because statistics show the truth. And black people are like, well, these white people statistics, but go conduct the surveys and the research yourself. Look at the statistics. We are the biggest threat to ourselves right now.
Yeah, and I think black people do hate statistics.
They hate them.
But the truth is, I like to remove the context from the stats and just look at the stats. Let's take the context out. Are we okay with what's going on in our community?
Right.
And if we're not, are we okay with who we want to fix it?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like the King Alfred plan has been turned on his head, and it's like, well, instead of us wasting our resources having to take these Negroes out, we can save because it talked about technologies and other things that they can use to mitigate or to support population control or maybe mitigate it. But hey, maybe instead of us using our own resources, we activate the chips and let them take themselves out. That save us money, time, and resources.
Well, black folks have got to go ahead.
No, I was saying, man, they got weapons that can literally microwave you in your house. People talking about spontaneous combustion my ass.
And we've got to really, like, my whole thing with all of this is, like, and I remember PC and I was having this conversation a while back. When I say a while back, I mean a number of years ago. When I'm listening to new information, I don't listen initially for, is this true or not? I listen for, is it possible? And if it's possible, then I think a plan needs to be made for it. Regardless of whether or not we can verify the accuracy of it. If we can sit in a room, listen to the theory, and say, yes, that is possible, then we need to start coming up with a plan for it. But we also need to be able to analyze the totality of the situation. For instance, PC brought up a great thing with the sovereign citizen. And one thing that their plans frequently lack is an understanding for the human element.
Yep.
They speak as if identifying as a specific thing cast a shield of invulnerability on you, and nobody can punch you in the side of the head after you say it.
Right.
Like as if you can get, like in PC's example, I can get pulled over by the cops and say, well, I'm a Moorish citizen from the sovereign planet of the third rock from the sun. All of a sudden, the police are going to just be teleported back into their car and not be allowed to get out and pull their gun out and shoot you in the face. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, there's a human element to all of this. How does this protect you? How did you claiming that stop me? Like I could punch you in the throat right now. How did you claiming that stop me from doing something to you. And as black people, we got to look at it that same way. How does us maneuvering in this way prevent somebody from chopping us in half?
From them dash cam videos that I've been watching, it don't do nothing but get them in more trouble. Cause like it's not. Stop just doing stuff, black people. Stop just repeating stuff. Stop just doing stuff. You have no power, and this what happens when you have no power, when you continue to have no power, when you continue to move forward as a powerless group, as individuals. This is what happens. You find yourself in vulnerable positions. Because once again, even though we all believe that black people aren't the biggest threat, but if white folk decide tomorrow that they want to enact anything, what you gonna do about it? Besides complain.
No, we know what they gonna do. They gonna scream, "They not like us," and start crip walking.
Oh,
Bruh.
mustard.
Bruh.
Again, that's not a shot at Kendrick, because I like the performance, but I am talking to you people that think that was the answer.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of those people who think that, if we're really fighting back against the system because we made music. So the artist, and then they got to think about the bigger picture. They allowed that. So you all don't understand that they knew what he was doing. They allowed that. So what does that mean?
Biggest the world has ever seen.
Because
more people watch Super Bowl than any other Super Bowl in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
the most watched halftime performance of all time.
He broke Michael Jackson record. I think that was the most watched performance of all time.
So y'all, so people, come on now. So y'all don't think that this was planned out? Hey, yes, we know what this, because people are like, well, he ain't gonna do this song. He ain't gonna know. You booked Kendrick Lamar. You didn't book Kodak Black. They know exactly who he is, and they knew this is the hottest rapper right now, and it paid off for everybody.
Well, not quite, because
we don't.
100. What was it? 100 million people turned the TV off after he's finished.
No, but then they still did their job. They still got what they needed.
I'm teasing.
They got the numbers, but
they turned.
They did say turn the TV off.
That game was out of
really, the game was over too, so it might well have.
I'm just. Hey, I'm throwing shots at all of the people that's like, look at the power of Kendrick. He said turn the TV off, and 133 million people listen.
Hey, put it to you like this: Black America, the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line represented Black America in our unity.
Don't do that. Nah, don't do that. Nah, that's a low blow, Joe.
No, it ain't.
Don't do that.
No, it ain't. That's an accurate blow. They represent how we work together. Terrible. Terrible.
All right, show's over.
Terrible.
Are you saying the black community need a better left tackle?
Black community
need a better whole line.
Right. That's the way we unite, the way they offensive line united that night. Terrible.
Bro, I'm laughing because that was funny. But that was a great analogy.
You definitely threw some spices.
The only difference is that Kansas City came as a favorite. Now,
right?
No,
we didn't look like it.
No.
I ain't watched a football game in decades, and there was a lot of new stuff for me, but they didn't look like the favorites.
Well, After that second and third drive, we're like, shoot. So but anyway, like man, look here, right? Look here, man. Once again, it's just another call to action. The young lady gave a call to action in the video. The young lady and her husband gave a call to action in the video. I'm gonna put the link to the full video in the description. So it is T3andMe is the YouTube page. So make sure y'all go subscribe to them. T3andMe. Shout out to y'all for making that video. But I get once again what I hate is they put the video together for the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. So we gotta do better.
We just gonna double down on that, huh?
Yep. We gotta do better. I mean, we got to do better. We gotta do better because if you're not even a threat to be wiped off the planet anymore, that's not shocking.
Nah, yeah, we're we worse off than the bumblebees.
I'm just saying, right? The bees get more flex than we do.
Polar bears,
right.
Yeah, you know what? About to wind down, Joe. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of thinking we're powerful as like a group of tuna. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have a whole flock of tuna going in the world, and then here come the sharks, and then here come the dolphins, and then last but not least, here come the orcas. And we're still, you know what I mean? We you know, tuna's bad out there when the orcas ain't out there, and when the dolphins ain't out there, and when the sharks ain't out there. Tuna's like probably the fourth, you know, on the you know what I'm saying, the food chain. But when them big boys pull up, man, we look like the Kansas City Chiefs a whole lot.
You know what? When you say Kansas City Chiefs and the water analogy, it made me think of what's the was it krill?
Yeah.
When it's a big old like line of them, and from inside the swarm, you can't see the end of the swarm. They talking about how the ones in the middle, some of them go their whole lives without ever seeing the edge of the swarm. They never see the blue ocean. Wow. And it made me, when you said that, it made me think about it. Because that's black people. We like, oh, we massive. We huge. And then, like, you know, we don't even realize, like, it's a whale finna pull up.
Well, great analogies, man.
Hey, man. Hey, I don't, you know, get it together. We got to get it together. That's it. Joseph Ward.
Tuna.
Joseph Ward, Professor Carlton Jones, Patrick Irvin, member, FetLifeStation.com. Run over there, FetLifeStation.com. Check out thepax.org as well as ontheshoulders1.com. You can support all of us in the description. Shout out to me, Kim. Hold up, let me give my shout out. Let me give my shout outs real quick. Shout out to me, Kim. Who else? I want to make sure I get everybody. Come on, phone. All right.
Yeah.
So shout out to me, Kim. Shout out to who else was this? Cheryl Tate. Yes. Thank you, Cheryl Tate. Thank you, me, Kim. Thank you, Cheryl Tate, for the support. My patrons, I got new patrons real quick. Let me do this real quick. Then we Bo Eldridge McLean, thank you for your support via Patreon. Bo Eldridge McLean and my man Juanito Wilbon, I really appreciate you, man. Hope to see you soon around the city. And with that being said, I'm Joseph Ward. Once again, this is On the Shoulders of Giants, Professor Carlton Jones, Patrick Irvin. And look out, because we're going to have some more stuff coming on this channel. The channel is expanding. We're getting better, and we're getting brighter, and we're getting bolder. And look, we're on our way. We need y'all help to get to 100,000 subscribers. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, get in that comments, because we're trying to grow. The more we grow, the more we can support the Black History School and all the other initiatives that we got going on. So supporting us is supporting your community. Peace out.
You.